NIU as a company was founded in China in 2015, when we shipped our first scooter in the summer of 2015. And it was in the spring of 2016 that we decided to go overseas. And we really shipped our first scooters into the European markets in early 2017 and have been growing ever since. And we spent basically 2017 and 2018 developing the European markets. After that, late 2018 and all of last year, we began opening up new markets like North and South America and East and Southeast Asia. And so at this point, still our core focus is outside of China is Europe, because it is a quite a large developed market for scooters and motorcycles, especially at the price point that we're selling at. And so it's, very exciting times. And plus the adoption of electric vehicles in Europe is quite high, especially in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, and the Nordics. And the United States, we're quite excited about. We're just opening this year. And with the United States, we have sharing scooters in 4 or 5 cities, New York City, Miami, Oakland, Austin. And the United States, though, as an expansion market, is a little bit different because it's not traditionally a scooter moped market. We like to drive big 4-wheel cars, and scooters are a little bit different for an American consumer. But we see great adoption in our sharing programs already in New York City that we work with Revel, a company there.
Joseph, but the scooter business in China, I grew up seeing my parents went from riding a bicycle to, all of a sudden they were on electrical scooters. That was like a big invention transforming Chinese societies. But in the US or in Europe, do they see them as transportation vehicles? It's like that's how I see an electrical scooter. Do they see them as necessary vehicle for transportation or for lifestyle purposes? Just for leisure?
I think it's a very good question you bring up. And in China, to give your listeners and your viewers a little bit of context, every single year in China right now, more than 20 million electric scooters are being sold every single year. There's over a 250 million with a B, so 250 million electric scooters on the roads of China at any one time, the total market. So that's
is this also
a little bit of
boosted, Joseph, by delivery services and delivery of packages?
Absolutely,
delivery
absolutely.
Of food with the coronavirus?
Absolutely. I mean, in the Chinese market, I mean, the number of scooters that are on the streets is driven by both normal consumers and the delivery services that are using them. Where in the West, scooters and motorcycles are also quite large, especially in Europe and South America and Southeast Asia. I mean, you don't have to go too far to look for a scooter on the streets of Vietnam. But that being said, if we look specifically at Europe, your question was, is this a lifestyle product or is it a transportation product?
How do you sell it?
It really is a combination of the two. So the first movers on our product, I would say it's 2017 and 2018, are definitely those that are very interested in technology and interested in driving an EV, right? And this is one way that they could begin driving EV because they live in cities and they don't want to have a car in Paris or in Berlin or in Amsterdam. So they choose an electric moped. Then moving on beyond that is when we really look at our brand, we are definitely a brand that is promoting urban lifestyle, and we're providing a certain type of vehicle that is, say, more in touch with a person who likes a nicely designed iPhone or nicely designed Samsung. But at the same time, we're trying to also provide a basic transport service, which is getting people from A to B for their normal, daily commutes. And then for those that don't really need that for their daily commute, we are looking to supplement what kind of vehicles or what type of transportation they're using, say, for personal use or just recreational use on the weekend or in the evenings. So instead of using an Uber or maybe public transportation, every now and then they are more regularly using their own small 2-wheel electric vehicle rather than jumping in a car or a bus or a train.
You actually positioned the company as a big data-driven technology company. And let's unpack this a little bit. How do you use big data in electrical scooters? Tell us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the best way to look at it is what we do in China, because everything that we do overseas, we leave on our servers in Europe. or Americas for data protection reasons. And there, the critical mass of data just isn't there yet as well. Tens of thousands of scooters are moving around the Western world, where we have hundreds of thousands of scooters moving around the streets of China. And from that, we can look at the data in a couple different ways. And China's data protection is equally stringent in terms of data protection. So it's, something we take very, very seriously. But when it comes to how we are capturing and using that data, I think the best way to think about it is, for the first time, a motorcycle company has real insights end to end how a consumer is buying, using, and then even servicing their vehicle over time. So we can see in real time if we're having issues, say with our brakes, where they're wearing down faster than expected. We can actually see that in real time because we can see the services coming in to be fixed, and then we can then back that out to our supply chain to actually improve what's happening, upstream in our supply chain. So when it comes to the data, that's one easy way to look at it from a supply chain. Even more interesting is how we can improve the efficiency of a vehicle over time based upon hundreds of thousands of riders' uses of the scooters. So we can improve the efficiency of batteries, the efficiency of how the motor is pulling energy from the battery, right? Those very basic things that take a considerable amount of vehicles on the road to really understand what real rider habits are. Because previously, those 20 million plus electric scooters that were entering the streets of China every single year, they really didn't provide much data back to the manufacturers themselves. And so it was a very long learning and development cycle. And so what this has done for us by thinking as a technology company first, down and then wrapping our technology into a scooter has given us a completely different position, not only in China as a manufacturer, but globally as a manufacturer of urban mobility.
You have been living in China for like 20 years almost already, Joseph. And our friend Gang from TechNode here is also based in China. Gang, I wanted to ask you, are you already a rider, or do you want to become a potential scooter owner? And what about your friend circle, like your community? Are they also looking at buying one maybe?
Well, I already have like 4 or 5 stuff. They already bought new.
Really? You buy from Joseph, I hope.
Yeah, I think I probably am the lucky one, and because the founder of New came to our events back 2015 is right after they started the company. So I probably one of the first to try the new scooters.
You seem to like it.
Didn't buy it. Okay, I should buy it. Otherwise,
and maybe buy insurance as well.
Gang, we won't hold it against you.
But you should also put a disclaimer. I think that you have no financial interest in the company.
No.
For example, shared bicycles, right? The issue, for example, with Mobike has been after service, repair, and maintenance, and we've seen these piles and piles of bikes in the streets of Beijing. Nobody took care of them. So what kind of challenges do you have in this regard, Joseph?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, firstly, New is a company that, we're a manufacturer of vehicles, we're a brand, and most of our vehicles that are on the streets in China and around the world are sold directly to customers like you and your listeners. A small percentage of our vehicles right now, we sell directly to fleets or to sharing companies. And those sharing operators primarily are overseas, in fact, not in China. One of our biggest partners the name of it is called Revel, and they're based out of New York City. But we also have partners in Amsterdam like Felix. In Spain, we have a company called Movo that we work with. Emmy in Germany, and the list goes on. I mean, there's like almost 24, right? And so it's very different than bicycles, because bicycles, especially the Mobike and Ofo bicycles, were very cheap, inexpensive. And, the strategy of those sharing operators was to dump as many vehicles onto the streets as fast as possible, because it was a user acquisition play for their investors. I digress if I go into that. But for our sharing operators, typically in a city, they'll have anywhere between 1,000 and say 3,000 scooters in a geographic area. similar to the size of, like, say, like Brooklyn, New York, right? And although that doesn't completely satisfy the demand needs of the users there, it does provide a pretty abundant resource of available mopeds at any one time. And the maintenance of these vehicles has to be very different and much more strict than, say, a bicycle, because these are licensed vehicles on the streets. They put license plates on them. You need a driver's license to be able to ride them. You need to wear a helmet. And of course, safety is a huge concern of all these operators. So the vehicle, a moving vehicle that's licensed and insurance, has to be taken care of in a very, very different way for sharing operators.
Yeah,
with mopeds.
Can I ask you one question, Joseph?
Yes.
One, two. And yeah, because we know NIU is a listed company. I also read from an article saying NIU actually is right now in 40 plus countries, and number one in electric scooter sales in nearly all the market. So I take it as a huge success. But because for Chinese companies going forward, and I think there are many other Chinese companies, they are very challenging for the global market. It's getting very challenging for them. So how do you think for NIU is what's the key kind of factors or strategies for Chinese company to become so successful in the global market?
That's a pretty tough question to unpackage, but I'll do my best here to do it in a concise amount of time. I think the one issue that a lot of Chinese brands have when going overseas is something very similar to what the Japanese and the Koreans experienced in the 70s, 80s, and 90s going into America and into Europe. It was a trust factor between, can we really trust products from these countries? And over time, it began to become accepted in those markets, and Japanese cars and Korean electronics and Japanese electronics became very accepted. And in fact, they create amazingly beautiful and well-crafted good products. And the same issue exists with now Chinese brands and products going overseas. Originally, if you're familiar with Chinese electronic brands like Haier or something like that, they kind of paved the way many years ago. In fact, I think when I was in university, I had a Haier refrigerator in my dorm room, right? Everyone did. And so that kind of laid the groundwork. And then you have other brands that have been going out into the markets like Huawei and Xiaomi and others, to name a few. And they've come with considerable marketing budgets to be able to, really create a presence in overseas markets. NIU's approach has been a little bit different, because as an electric scooter or electric motorcycle currently outside of China is not really a mass market product. It's not a niche product, but it's not mass market. And so we really had to approach the market a little bit differently. We're not going to spend lots of money on traditional advertising or even big digital advertising budgets. But we started very basic, and we knew we had, time, because we had the best product at one of the best prices in the market back in 2017, 18, 19, and even today in 2020, 3 years later. And so what we did over this time is do two important things. Number one is find the best partners in each of the markets that we were going into to help us build a sales network, a traditional sales and after sales network. Because with that in place, we were able to assure our customers that when you buy a product from us, you're buying it from a reputable store. And if anything were to go wrong with this product that that would go wrong in a mobility device, you'll be able to bring it back to this location and get it fixed under warranty. Secondly, and so we did that in every one of our markets. So we spent a lot of time finding the best distributors, the best sales team, and the best dealership network to get the base level started. Secondly, is that we knew that in order to create trust with customers, is that traditional customers would be using things called Google and YouTube to be able to learn more about the product and the brand and the story behind what this product is all about. So in 2017, 2018, we spent a lot of time reaching out to journalists and specialists in motorcycles, technology, and other, special YouTube channels that focus on motor vehicles to get them to do authentic tests of our product. And by them, doing these tests on a wide range of our vehicles over time, some were very positive, some were average reviews, and few here and there gave very authentic personal opinions of their belief of electric taking over petrol motorcycles. But that holistic approach that we took now has thousands of links out there. So when you Google NIU in German, new electro roller, or électrique new in French, you find a lot of third-party validation of our product. So those two things wrapped together over an extended period of time has allowed us to enter these markets methodically to create trust with the customer, and has allowed a Chinese brand to really position itself in these markets as a market leader that is trusted.
It also seems to help your financials. As Gang mentioned, you're listed on the Nasdaq, and you had a fabulous final quarter of 2019. Your sales volume, I think, rose by like 13.5%, and revenues were up 25.4% year on year. What's your outlook from here?
So I think it's being listed is definitely a fit for the company and for the brand itself. Obviously, that creates an additional level of trust and validation of the brand and the company that's behind the brand.
But probably coronavirus this year will put the brakes on sales figures as well.
Well, it's really hard to be honest with you. It's really hard to say at this point, and we're still trying to unpack what is happening in each one of our markets, because every market is being affected a little bit differently. As back in China, China is almost back to normal again, right? Which is a rapid turnaround from, let's say, late February, and we're now in early April 2020, where in other markets, in the United States and throughout Europe, we're going through a transition phase. I've just got off of phone calls with our partners in Germany and Austria. And Germany and Austria on April 20th are going to begin opening up retail again. So things will hopefully, what we see is improvement, but obviously Corona is definitely going to have an impact to some degree. We haven't been able to correctly measure it just yet.
So Joseph, your biggest overseas market is in Europe. It would make natural sense for you to be listed as a company in Europe. But why did you choose NASDAQ?
I think this is a good question for my CFO and my CEO, and not really one that I want to unpack. But the easiest way to think about it is that the U.S. exchanges are globally accepted and recognized, and that is why they chose
the market reputation. So let me ask you, what comes with it is obviously the lucky spillover effects. And I think that affects a lot of the trust issues. Last week, Gang and Martina and I, we did a talk with subject of lucky. So how does that affect your company? What do you have to explain to your clients, investors all over the world? We're fine.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm going to refer back to my answer before, which is stuff that's related to our public listing and the state of us as a publicly traded company is something that is best suited for Li Yan, our CEO, and our CFO. But I think, the markets are investors in markets are those that get to decide the value of a company at any one time, right? And that is, the situation that exists today is that, people that are investing in companies that are based in the United States or based in China, they are taking different forms of risk in making that investment, and they make judgment calls on how they want to price that risk.
Absolutely.
Simple as that.
Let me go back to, perhaps I'd love to have yours and Gang's view on this. And I think what is truly disruptive for the shared bike industry, as Martina alluded to, it was fundamentally to disrupt the traditional way of owning a bike into a true form of shared economy. The bikes are put everywhere, and based on the GPS, I can pick up a bike and go wherever and just drop it there. And so because of the cost of a scooter or electrical scooter, it's not so possible, it's not a high likelihood that we can actually enter into that shared scooter space, maybe when China becomes a lot richer. But what fundamentally comes with the bike industry in for mobike, etc., is that if I were on a mobike, they know where I am. They know that I stopped by a Walmart, say for example, I stopped by a drugstore, I stopped
or didn't respect the red light.
I got into say a karaoke place, whatever, and all of a sudden, all of those data could be turned into a commercial opportunity for similar companies to start selling on my app the sort of things that I like to buy. And so for you, what you have mentioned about big data, how you use it is essentially to transfer data from the vehicle back to the manufacturers. But do you do any sort of data analytics so that it'll open up opportunities, because you are on the road, you know where people go, you know where people spend money, and you know the sort of neighborhoods that they hang out the most, and all these companies could potentially benefit from commercial opportunities.
Right. I think it's a good question. First, GPS data outside of China is controlled in a different way than it is inside China. This is the case both for the United States, Europe, and elsewhere. And so, just to let me make it clear for your listeners, is actually a sharing operator in Europe or the United States actually cannot track your entire route. All they can get access to is your start point and your end point, because they need to know where the vehicle started and where it ended, right? To be able to create a fee structure for you, but also to make sure they know where their vehicle is when you're finished with it. So everything else that happens in between, in short, is not there visible for them to be able to see. So there is a lot of business opportunity that you're talking about that would require to be able to see that entire path to be able to really monetize it. So that being said, is where news sits in all of this is, we provide the software, the connected scooter, as well as the hardware, the scooter, to provide operators vehicles to be able to provide their services. The business models that they want to create long term, and how that operates within the law of the land that they're operating in, is for them to make a decision on. We provide them the hardware and the software to operate within the context of that. But what you're talking about in terms of different business models is quite interesting, and I think over time it will evolve, to be quite honest with you. And I think just looking at the you're almost, not to downplay your question, but you're almost looking at it like as if it's Facebook, and you're looking at how to monetize the user's experience, how to monetize the movement of the person through a city, right? And I it's an interesting way to monetize an asset like a bike, but at the same time, I think there's far more interesting ways that are useful for the user to build a business around helping a user move from A to B, and it really will take the development of vehicles, the development of interconnected systems, to be able to really understand what is the true business that we're creating for people in a shared space. Because at the end of the day, a shared vehicle is just one more asset inside a public transportation system. Right? We use buses, we use trams, we use metro systems, we use Ubers, we use taxis, we use bikes, and we use mopeds. This is just one more asset. And so really figuring out how it fits into the whole system is still going to take a few more years for interconnected systems to actually talk to each other. And then once we figure that out, then more businesses will really understand how they can make a sustainable business that's profitable for the long term.
I would like you to imagine the future with me for a second, Joseph. So in 10 years down the road, how will smart urban mobility look like?
Another great question. I think there's reality, and then there's a bit of hope, maybe, in what I'm about to say.
And visions like Elon Musk and Hyperloop technology systems and so on.
I don't even want to touch on that because I have no idea where that will go. But I would say that in the developed world, the developed Western world, in big cities, we will definitely see multimodal public transportation systems that don't involve cars, or cars will be a far lower impact vehicle inside cities. And in fact, I truly, truly believe that cars are the enemy of urban transportation. They create so many issues. They create the congestion. And actually, beyond congestion, the biggest problem of cars inside cities is actually not even the traffic. It's the waste of space that they cause. All of the parking garages, above ground, below ground.
That and of course pollution. I mean, with climate change, we cannot afford it anymore. So hopefully we'll have a much greener future of transportation. So
I agree with you. Let me touch on that really quickly. Is that even electric cars, they'll make it more green for sure, absolutely. But the problem is they still have the congestion and the space problem, right? And as Western developed societies, we need to detach ourselves from the 2,000-pound steel box that we call our mobility device and be open to new forms of mobility, whether that's the bus, the metro, a motorcycle. Hopefully most of these are electric or being powered by renewable resources. And so the future of those developed cities will look something like that. Now, when it comes to the developing world, outside of China, so like India, Southeast Asia, Latin America, that's a coin flip as to what's going to happen there. It's still, most of these cities are still very much powered by two wheels, motorcycle, petrol, that are lower cost. So at least they're doing it on two wheels. But the hidden secret is a lot of those countries in Southeast Asia and Latin America have very, very low standards for the motorcycles that they allow on their roads. And those motorcycles are actually more polluting than automobiles. So these are things that we begin to miss. Yep. Sorry, Gang, you were saying?
Sorry. Just, because you are the leading international expansion for NIU. I'm a little bit surprised when you said that, right now you focus on EU and US. But you for sure, because you see more and more Chinese companies, they are looking in the past 1 to 2 years, they are looking at Southeast Asia instead of US. I think as a matter of fact, not many Chinese tech companies are looking at EU because EU is more mysterious for Chinese companies. So if you go to Southeast Asia, so actually scooter is a huge market. But
absolutely.
So how do you think, for NIU, so maybe the next one will be Southeast Asia? And how do you see it?
Well, I mean, we already have teams of people that are floating around the region, setting up our distribution networks, sales networks, throughout Southeast Asia and into India. Okay, no secret there. Your question, that why are we not like moving there first versus Europe or the Americas? It's about the technology, and it's quite simple. Is that electric mobility requires big batteries, and even in our scooter, it's a relatively big battery, and that big battery relative to gas-powered scooters right now is quite expensive. So the average scooter in Southeast Asia is selling between $800 and $1,200 US, where our product currently in Europe is selling between 2,000 and 4,500 euro. Okay, so the price does not match what the market demands right now. We'd be very niche in Southeast Asia. That being said, is we have our R&D team working on different formats of vehicles with different types of batteries that meet the demand need of those markets. And that also requires that the general curve for battery powered vehicles, the cost of a battery, needs to fall lower onto that curve so that markets like Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, India can actually meet the demand, will meet that price. And we're almost there. I mean, it's not far away, and we will see great growth. We're just in a preparation phase in those markets at this moment.
Joseph, a lot of people compare NIU to NIO, also a Chinese electrical vehicle company, NIU versus NIO. And of course, I mean, your market cap is 450 million plus, NIO is 40 million plus, and you make money, NIO loses money big time. So there are a lot of fundamental differences, but NIO is an amazing concept as well. In terms of envisioning that future urban lifestyle, the likes of Elon Musk or William Li, they have gone very big into electrical vehicles. Are you competing with them? do you necessarily see yourself, which is the space that you would carve out for NIU? Do you compete in the electrical space? Do you compete in the scooter space? Do you compete in the tech space? Where is
all great questions? All great questions, Shirley. And I think the key thing you have to remember about NIU, the space that we compete in, is very simple. We are providers of urban mobility solutions. That's the vehicle and the software that is designed to move people inside cities. NIO and Tesla and the list goes on. They're building cars. They're trying to sell a car to anyone who will buy a car, right? Whether that person lives in a city or that person lives in the suburbs or even further out. And in fact, I plead to them to stop selling cars to people that live in cities, because they are doing the city more harm than they are good long term, because they're continuing to perpetuate a bad habit of car ownership inside cities, right? Cars are good if they're electric and they're being used outside of cities. And so are they my competitor? Absolutely, because they are, trying to take the mindset of people away from efficient mobility solutions to inefficient mobility solutions, because it's a prestige product, right? You look more important when you're in a car than when you're on a scooter. But I think you actually look pretty stupid when you're in a car, because it takes about 10 times more energy to move you in a Tesla than it does on a new scooter. So think about that. Think about how inefficient a car is in moving people inside a city. Because a city, you're usually only moving 3 to 6 to 7 kilometers at most in a single direction, right? And if that's the case, do I really need 2,000 pounds of steel to move me somewhere? I just don't think I think it's quite obvious that it's not the right use of.
We'll pass your message on to Elon Musk.
We'll take
Yes,
absolutely. We'll take Elon Musk.
Please do.
So
we should ask Elon.
Please go.
Add him.
We definitely do. So,
but I'm still like a big fan of public transportation. I mean, in European cities, I mean, Zurich, on a usual day without COVID-19, you walk, you use the tram, the bus, the trains, the bicycle, right? So you really don't need any of that, no.
But Joseph, I want to go back to your, that's a great vision, by the way, but what's coming next, I think, is truly exciting for the automobile industry's driverless cars. They are already on the road. Well, I can send a car out. Hypothetically, I don't own a driverless car. You go do grocery shopping for me and come back and park yourself, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Can I do that with a scooter in the future? Can I send a scooter out to buy groceries for me?
I don't think it's far out of the realm of possibility. I mean, if you look at the vehicle... If you look at the vehicle that we launched at CES in January, it's called the TQI. It's a 3-wheeled vehicle. It's basically a motorcycle design, but with 3 wheels. And you could see something like that as a vehicle that would provide exactly that service for you. It will be able to be autonomous. It will be able to do the same functions in the not so distant future as what you're talking about with autonomous vehicles, right? Autonomous cars. So I think, and again, it comes down to size, right? For cities, when we're talking about cities, this is really where we have to focus in on is a smaller 2-wheel, 3-wheel vehicle that's autonomous more appropriate for cities? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. And so that's what we're trying to tackle.
So let me ask you a question. You are in the center of China's technology, so you are sort of the authority here. After you've listened to Joseph, can you give a scorecard to what he said? Is it 100% authentic? You think a little exaggerated, underestimated? And also, how do you see NIU? Do you see NIU as a vehicle company, a scooter company?
Gang is biased because you already own cars.
Do you see NIU as a technology company?
Well, NIU is a company. I cannot say that much, but I do believe, it's back to, I think in China, for tech companies, everything is possible. That's the only thing I can say. Is I guess the lots of research, inside the news company, the lots of plannings. So no, I think everything could happen. I don't. Sorry, I can't really give you the right answer, but I think we'll see. It's maybe the new product are going to come out very soon from you. I don't know.
Well,
we wish you and Joseph all the best rolling into the future.
And that's absolutely just a joke. I think Joseph is underestimating the potential that the company is truly delivering in China. And thank you so much for that. Changing the lifestyle for everyone and everyone's family means so much personally to us.
Thank you.